The Young Turks Ana Kasparian took heat online after posting a video of a man assaulting a woman, saying, quote, "This is a man who was arrested 41 times. After this incident, he was released and went on to send a subway worker to the hospital with a broken collarbone. But according to this crime reporter, that man committing assault breaking bones is the real victim." Here's the video. It's pretty graphic. And so then Ana Kasparian was getting a lot of criticism online from the left on Twitter, other places, for, calling her kind of like a right-wing person, for daring to be concerned on behalf of the person who got sucker punched, and anyone else experiencing violence on the streets, which I think is pretty ridiculous, is indicative of some messed up priorities here. Look, we can have a reasonable debate over what are the right political policy strategies for reducing violence on the streets, reducing homelessness, reducing drug addiction, but I don't. What is wrong about being outraged that is something a random New Yorker has to experience? That obviously that's horrible. That's wrong. That's horrifying. And I am just as sickened about it as Ana Kasparian is, but I'm not a progressive in good standing with progressives. So I guess I'm not betraying any team to say it sickens me. But I guess for progressive people, it's different. But you probably, Batya, as someone who has been on, I know you're a very independent thinker, but you've been associated with those circles and that ideology, and you've been very, very critical of it. And I know you're concerned about rising crime. So you've probably gotten a lot of the kinds of criticism Ana Kasparian's getting now.
The thing is, she was getting it from both sides, the progressives who, prioritize criminals and mentally ill homeless people and drug addicts over their victims. But she was also getting it from the right, who were saying, well, you're a progressive. Your website is full of articles talking about defunding the police and police accountability. And this is where this leads. And I so identify with where she's coming from as somebody who myself went through that journey of first pushing for things like bail reform and then realizing the costs of them, and that maybe these, there were a lot of mistakes made due to some, I didn't have that much power, but, things I advocated for that I now see as very dangerous and bad. And I have to say, like, one of the things I hate most about online discourse is when people come for someone for finally arriving at the right conclusion. Like, you don't have to criticize someone for taking the time to go through, to honestly reassess their position. You should be cheering that on. And I totally agree with you. Seeing progressives get upset at someone for standing up for, can you imagine a more vulnerable person than the woman who got punched in that video, an elderly Asian woman? Like, how do we, as a society, not say, like, we must protect people like that, we must respect people like that, to arrive at that stage in life, to get punched by somebody who's been arrested 41 times and then have the people who see themselves as the compassionate people side with the person who punched you. I mean, it's so disgusting. And I think it's why, just to bring it back to politics, this is why people like Ron DeSantis are getting so much traction on both sides of the political aisle, because there is a sickness in the progressive movement. It's compassion. It curdles into cruelty because there are no limits on it. And they have this woke way of defining who deserves compassion and who doesn't, and it always excludes people who you would think actually deserve compassion: children, the elderly, minorities living in poor neighborhoods. Where's the compassion for these people? You won't find it on the left anymore.
And I would agree that someone who's been arrested, obviously you're guilty, you're innocent until proven guilty. The policy, it's a policy in New York. I mean, Rikers is full of people awaiting trial, who are locked up for long periods of time, who have not been found guilty, and they're there for forever. It's under horrible conditions. So I get it. I think that should be reformed. I don't support that. In this case, this is someone who has been arrested many times. So in this case, it should be more evident, I think, that keeping this person behind bars until a trial or until whatever the legal action being taken is makes sense in this case, where maybe it doesn't make sense, and I would think it would be unjust if someone's arrested for the first time, it has to wait forever behind bars. No, but in this case, that burden shifts a little bit. And look, I take the point that maybe mental health resources or helping this person with drug addiction, keeping them in a mental health facility rather than the prison, all of those things would be better. Sure, fine. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what strategies are being employed to make that the default. But that doesn't change the fact that this person is on camera punching someone, totally unprovoked, a random person on the street. And at that point, you can't just handle this as then it's not just a mental health problem. It's a violent. He clearly committed a violent act. And if you think the government has any legitimacy or any purpose, its main purpose is to protect people from violence, from random violence, from other people initiating violence against them. So they have to do. We don't have society at all if that problem is not being handled. And that's what I don't understand. And if it takes, and then I think you run into all sorts of problems. I've looked at this a little bit. Well, what does it take to actually get mentally ill, drug addicted, homeless people? How do we get them off the streets into proper environments? Because I think, of course, we all want that. But then you find out it's very difficult to keep those people even if you give them homes. It's difficult to keep them there because a lot of them want to use drugs on the street and or are psychotic and need to follow a very regimented schedule of taking antipsychotic medication. And because of the laws in this country, it's very difficult to force people who are unwilling to take antipsychotic medication. Maybe that needs to change. There's an area where my libertarianism, my instinctive, well, no, you can't force medicine on people if they don't want it, or you shouldn't, has run up against it. Well, this is a significant problem, and maybe and I've had to change a little bit of how I think about that. But it's clearly a hard problem to solve. But just pretending it's not a problem at all absolutely doesn't solve it, or that we should just do nothing about it because the other thing is too hard.
No, absolutely. I mean, we all remember Kalief Broder, God rest his soul, who spent 3 years in Rikers awaiting trial for a crime he did not commit, got out and committed suicide because of how horrific the experience was. We all remember examples like that. And of course, people like that, speedy trial is one of the, bedrocks of our Constitution, and it's until proven guilty, et cetera. But, that's not this situation. You have violent criminals who are preying on the vulnerable over and over and over. And the same crowd that cheered on vaccine mandates, right? They've cheered on forcing people to take a vaccine that does not do what they said it was going to do, right? Those same people think that, total bodily autonomy to the mentally ill, who are a danger to society and a danger to the most vulnerable. These people are preying on children, the elderly, anybody they can who they think can't defend themselves. And so I just think it is so horrific. And, kudos to Ana Kasparian for standing up to her side and standing up for that woman and saying the truth.
Yeah, a danger to other people, a danger to random citizens on the street, and a danger to themselves. It doesn't feel humanitarian, to just let these people go through this experience and not do more. Whether that's a better, a more sane criminal justice response, a mental health response, whatever it is, we have to do it because it's just becoming and I think it is really cruel to dunk on people like Anna expressing outrage that this is allowed to take place. It makes no sense to me that your sympathies are just automatically the other way, as some progressives, some liberals were watching this happen on social media. All right, we'll be back with more Rising in just a minute. Stay with us.